What's up guys, RotoDWalk here, and today I want to talk about what I consider to be the single most important concept for understanding competitive Pokemon, and that is the concept of understanding your win conditions. What are win conditions in competitive Pokemon? Well, simply put, they're what you have to do in any given game to win that game. As we all know, you win a game of Pokemon when all 6 of your opponent's Pokemon have fainted before yours, but there's much more to that. And, in many cases, as we'll see later in this video, simply KOing an opponent's Pokemon, or allowing or preventing one of your Pokemon from being KO'd, can in fact be the wrong decision and bring you further from winning the game instead of closer to it. Now the reason I want to talk about this now is if you keep the concept of win conditions in your mind as you're practicing Pokemon battling, it will really help simplify the decisions on any given turn and help you understand what decisions are good and what decisions are bad, as those decisions either push you closer towards your win condition or bring you further away from it. Now, while properly identifying your and your opponent's win conditions is important for every style of team, it's easiest to see on a hyper-offense team, especially screens hyper-offense like this. If you haven't had the misfortune of running into a team like this on the ladder, I'll explain it quickly now. So these are some clips from a couple of videos ago. And the basic idea of this team is to use Aerodactyl and Electrode to set up rocks on your opponent's side of the field, prevent them from setting up their rocks, and then set up screens and go into one of your preferred setup sweepers to hopefully win the game from there. The idea is that you use your first 2 Pokemon to set up the most ideal 4v6 possible, and then hope that that advantage will let you win the game. With that in mind, let's look at our standard lead here, which is Focus Sash Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl's job here is to use Taunt if your opponent leads with the Pokemon that can use rocks, and then use Stealth Rocks. Now, let's look at our opponent's side of the field. There's nothing here that would prevent Aerodactyl from doing its job. The main Pokemon you're looking for there are going to be something like Starmie, or potentially an Oblivious Mamoswine, as they can either set up their own rocks through your taunt, or in Starmie's case they can threaten to deny your rocks while killing Aerodactyl by using Rapid Spin to break your sash and increase their speed, and then a water move, or honestly, most any other move Starmie has, to kill your Aerodactyl. So it looks like Aerodactyl lead is good. Okay, so now that we've identified our lead, and we know how our team is supposed to function, let's take a look at which one of our 3 setup sweepers poses the most threat to our opponent. First, we have Gengar. Gengar with Substitute, Focus Blast, Shadow Ball, and Nasty Plot threatens to set up on Slacking, because Substitute is fantastic against Slacking. It threatens to, well, not easily set up on Cofagrigus. It should 1 or 2-shot Cofagrigus, depending on their set, and after Nasty Plot, that's an easy kill. Infernape, after Nasty Plot, we usually kill depending on the set, and Stealth Rocks will be important for stopping a potential Sash Infernape from putting an end to that. Now, Chansey is a bit of an issue. The standard Chansey set used to be Seismic Toss and Toxic, combined with either Substitute or Rocks, and Soft Boiled as the healing move. Now while this is still very commonly used, an adaptation I've been seeing quite a few players make is running Psywave over Seismic Toss on Chansey. What this does is instead of dealing your level as damage, it deals some random number in between half of your level to your level times 1.5. What this means is that you have a move that can now hit Gengar and turns Chansey into something besides setup bait for Gengar, while still giving you the option to break something like a Substitute Volcarona. This is a very good move and something I want to scout for. However, with the way this game plays out, I feel that even if Chansey reveals that it is Psywave, I would most likely keep Gengar in to chip Chansey low, and then taunt it with Electrode to prevent it from healing, which should allow Dragonite or Volcarona to sweep later. So that's not much of an issue. The 2 things that are standing in the way of Gengar are Alakazam, which is faster and threatens to one-shot me, and Scizor. Now, Scizor doesn't threaten to one-shot Gengar. In fact, even a Gengar without defensive investment is not 2-hit KO'd by Choice Band Scizor Bullet Punch. However, you do have to mess around with Focus Blast accuracy, and that can always be a dangerous thing. And if screens aren't up, Scizor definitely threatens to be a problem for Gengar. So Gengar looks promising. I just have to potentially play around Alakazam and Scizor, and Dragonite also looks pretty promising here, as Substitute allows me to set up in front of Slacking or Cofagrigus. And after Dragon Dance, I threaten to easily outspeed and KO Infernape and Scizor running Fire Punch and Dragon Claw as my offensive moves. Now, Chansey I can probably set up on, as Substitute will allow me to avoid a Toxic, and I can just boost my stats high enough to break through it if it decides to spam Seismic Toss. Also, once again, if it reveals Seismic Toss, it's Gengar food. Alakazam could once again be a problem for Dragonite by outspeeding Dragonite even at +1 and threatening me with a Hidden Power Ice. So depending on how the game goes, most likely I'll be throwing away some combination of Kabutops or Volcarona to get rid of Alakazam if I have to open up Dragonite or Gengar. So now that we have a rough game plan in mind, we're going to get into the game here and see how this goes. One last important step is to look at your opponent's team and see what you have to do to prevent them from potentially sweeping you, or from them setting up a position which would be very difficult for your team to come back from. I'm going to be brutally honest, I don't think this team is very good. Alakazam could potentially be an issue for this team, but I have far too many failsafes for Alakazam, and even in a pinch behind screens, very few, if any, of my Pokemon are one-shot by Alakazam. The rest of his team is fairly passive, and slacking is honestly more of a liability than a benefit, as the free turn it provides me means that my setup sweepers can easily abuse it and boost to sweep his team. So let's get into this game pretty quickly. This isn't really to cover gameplay, most just show how to identify win conditions and how to play towards them throughout the game. So we lead our Aerodactyl, we get up Stealth Rocks, but then we see that this is in fact a Swords Dance Scizor. He goes for Swords Dance, so Aerodactyl's job just becomes to taunt him to prevent him from setting up too much. Then we go into Electrode, we taunt him to prevent him from getting up to +6, and we set up our screens in his face. This allows us to teleport out. It doesn't matter if he kills us or if we teleport out, Electrode's job is just to get those screens and get out of there. At which point we go to Volcarona. Now, Volcarona doesn't look like it's poised to win this game. We're going to be taking some damage from Bullet Punch, and so even if this is Seismic Toss or Psywave Chansey, it's going to be able to damage us before we can set up enough to threaten it. So all I want to do with Volcarona here is kill this Scizor. If I throw off a Fire-type move, he can either switch into maybe a Pokemon Volcarona can set up on, or he can give up Scizor. Because he's up +4 with Scizor, I figured he would stay in and try to get all the value he can. So, with Scizor removed, once again remember, our options for Gengar are looking vastly improved, as now if we're ever behind a substitute, we can easily deal with Alakazam. Let's go forward a little bit more. Volcarona kills him, then he brings in Chansey. I decide Chansey's 3 main moves here are going to be putting up rocks in my side of the field, attempting to Toxic or Seismic Toss Volcarona, so I throw in Hard Gengar, and what do you know? It's a move that Gengar's immune to, Seismic Toss. That would just set up a substitute, and proceed to sweep him. He reveals that he's Modest Alakazam instead of Timid. This is something you should never do, as it removes Alakazam's niche of countering Gengar. Now Gengar kills him, I'm behind a sub, and Gengar beats the rest of his team. At this point, it's game over, and there's no use looking at the rest of this game. Let's go ahead and look at the next game. Here, unfortunately for him, we get matched up again. He's made a slight variation in his team, as he's now running Staraptor over Alakazam. This doesn't change any of the fundamental issues. It is just one more Pokemon that doesn't get in the way of a Dragonite or Gengar sweep. Dragonite's looking even more promising here. Now, because he hasn't shown me a Pokemon that will prevent my lead, we're once again going to lead Aerodactyl, set up rocks, we're going to taunt him, so it's more important for Aerodactyl to keep these rocks on his side of the field than it is for Aerodactyl to stay alive, as Aerodactyl poses very little threat of sweeping his team, because Scizor's Bullet Punch will always stop me, and he has far too much bulk spread between Chansey and Slacking for Aerodactyl to pose much of a threat. So, that being said, we go ahead, we set up our rocks, we set up screens, keep him taunted so his HP stays low, and we go into our Dragonite. Dragonite here can easily set up a Dragon Dance, as behind a screen, Staraptor does virtually no damage to Dragonite. We set up our screen, and we go ahead and kill a Staraptor. Now, Cofferegus comes in. I'm hoping, most likely, that this Cofferegus is not running Haze, and instead is relying on Will-O-Wisp to deal with physical setup sweepers like Dragonite. I substitute, he Will-O-Wisps into the substitute, and that's game over. Now let's quickly look at the third game. This game is actually a revenge match against this player as well. The first time I played his team, he revealed the problem to me of running Breloom in the slot of Kabutops. We added the option of Sash Kabutops on this team, A, because it anti-leads Mamoswine, which is fairly important, but it's also just useful in lots of other situations. So when you take a look at this game, Aerodactyl is not going to be a good lead. Both Starmie and Mamoswine threaten to prevent Aerodactyl from either setting up rocks or threaten to set up rocks through Aerodactyl. So in this case, I choose to lead Kabutops. If he leads Starmie, that's fine with me. I can then switch to Electrode, set up screens, and attempt to try to sweep him there. If he brings in Mamoswine, that's fine, as I can meet him with Kabutops to spin away his rocks. So, we're leading Kabutops as it covers his 2 leads to Aerodactyl. Now, when we look at the setup sweeper we're looking to go for in this game, we can see that Gengar is probably not going to be a huge threat to his team. I'm not running Thunderbolt Gengar, so I don't do that much damage to Gyarados, as it has quite a bulky special defense stat at base 100. Scizor also could be a problem for Gengar, as I have to mess around with Focus Blast accuracy, and Starmie once again threatens to outspeed and kill Gengar. So, really not looking good unless something really weird happens throughout the game. What about Dragonite? Well, Dragonite's Fire Punch is going to easily kill Ferrothorn and Scizor, and if Mamoswine is out of the way, Dragonite's looking pretty poised to win this game, as it's immune to Gyarados' Intimidate, and my EVs are set to outspeed and kill standard offensive Starmie after one Dragon Dance. So, Dragonite looks like a very viable candidate, especially if we can remove Mamoswine, or confirm that it is not something like Jolly Choice Scarf Mamoswine, which I don't believe it is, but it could have changed it up between games. Now, With that in mind, Volcarona could also be a threat, but we'd have to get this Gyarados' HP chipped down pretty significantly. However, if rocks are up and Gyarados is chipped, also, if we can get a little chip on into Infernape, as even at +1, Volcarona isn't threatening to do much more than 60-70% to most Infernape sets, then Volcarona could be poised to set up, but Dragonite seems easier, so at this point I've decided I'm willing to sack all other 4 Pokemon on my team to set up for potentially a Dragonite or a Volcarona sweep, and that's how you play this sort of team. Now my opponent's team is quite threatening. If he's able to get off a free Dragon Dance with his Gyarados, then he threatens to one-shot my Volcarona and Gengar with Waterfall, Ice Fang for Dragonite, and Power Whipper Waterfall for Kabutops. So, denying opportunities for this Gyarados to come in and sit up is going to be one of my top priorities, and that's why I'm going to avoid Volcarona unless I'm able to get him to switch into rocks twice and chip him down. So, with that in mind, let's go into what we both led for this game, and that will determine how we play it out from here. I lead Kabutops against my opponent's Mamoswine. Here, Kabutops always prevents Mamoswine from setting up his rocks, as if I simply click Waterfall turn 1. If he isn't Sash, he'll die, so if he does set up rocks, I spin them away, and if he is Sash, I still knock him down to 1 HP. If he goes for rocks, that's fine. I click Rapid Spin, and because of my Focus Sash, he can't one-shot me, so then I remove Mamoswine and remove his rocks. Or if he does decide to use Earthquake turn 1, predicting the Rapid Spin on Kabutops, he knocks me to 1 HP, my Waterfall knocks him to 1 HP, and then he has to Ice Shard me before I can Aqua Jet him, thus maybe he can kill Kabutops, but getting this Mamoswine to 1 HP would be more important for me in the long term. So, let's play this out. He decides to get up rocks, and he's not Focus Sash, so he goes down to the Waterfall. So after getting that kill, my opponent decides to bring in his Ferrothorn. This is a very important thing I want you guys to notice. Right here, he has the option to kill Kabutops by using Power Whip. However, if he kills Kabutops, I'm faster and I'm able to Rapid Spin his rocks away, at which point I can bring in one of the 2 Taunt Pokemon that he should know are Taunt Pokemon, as Screen's Hyper Offense wouldn't run Electrode or especially Aerodactyl without Taunt. So, if he chooses to kill Kabutops, then I get the Rapid Spin off, and that's more beneficial for me even though I lose a Pokemon. What he should be doing in this situation is simply spamming Stealth Rocks or whatever other entry hazard Ferrothorn happens to be running, which in this case is Rocks, as we find out later. And at that point, I will eventually kill myself by Rapid Spinning into his Iron Barbs, and if you die the turn you Rapid Spin, or if you die to recoil from Rapid Spinning from something like Iron Barbs, your spin doesn't go off. Him keeping rocks up is far more important than killing this Kabutops, but instead my opponent prioritizes getting the kill over working towards his win condition of getting rocks on my side of the field to facilitate his Gyarados to sweep, and because of that he loses the game. He kills Kabutops as I remove rocks, which means that I'm able to bring in one of my setup sweepers in front of Ferrothorn, which is once again one of my win conditions. I get the taunt off, get my screens, he goes into Infernape, U-turns back into Gyarados, as I taunt Gyarados to stop it from setting up, and he brings back in Ferrothorn. This is another game-losing play, as now he has Ferrothorn, and I can easily bring in one of my setup sweepers. In this case, I go for Dragonite. As we've seen, Mamoswine is down, so Dragonite threatens to one-shot the rest of his team after a Dragon Dance, and I go for a simple substitute. He reveals that he has Power Whip, no way to predict the substitute. The substitute is in case he's running Toxic, or he's running Thunder Wave. Either way, even if he immediately switches out, I get the substitute and I win the game. He goes for rocks, but at that point he's admitting that the game is defeated, and after I get a Dragon Dance, Dragonite sweeps his team. So, hopefully this has shown the sort of decisions that should be taking place in your head as you're playing a game. Getting a kill is not always the best way to win the game. The best way to win the game is to look at your pre-planned win conditions, look at how your team is going to interact with theirs, and make plays that put you closer to that win condition. Trading Kabutops' life to remove rocks is more important because Kabutops is never going to win that game, but Volcarona and Dragonite will, but they only will if I keep rocks off my side of the field. This is how you can determine if sacking a Pokemon is worth it. This is how you determine if setting up rocks is worth it for Pokemon's life. If removing rocks off your side of the field is worth a Pokemon's life. With win conditions in mind, it'll turn Pokemon from a game of a whole bunch of branching decision paths into a very simple path to see what do you have to do to win the game. Does a given play bring you closer to a win condition? Great, do it. Does it bring you further from win condition? Okay, don't make that play. Having this in mind, instead of simply trying to play for kills or damage, will make you much more successful in the long run and will really help your understanding of competitive Pokemon as a whole. Alright, so with that, I'm going to call it tonight, and I'll see you guys later.